Devastator. Devin Astator. Okay, that's not
That's
funny.
a good one.
Devastator, is that your new Twitter?
Yeah, let's go with
Twitter
Devin
handle?
Slater for the show.
All right. Everybody, we are live. Devin is joining me today, and we're going to start the show now in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello and welcome back to another episode of DSLR Film New Podcast. No Mitch show this week. He's actually taken his daughter to college. Devin, however, is joining me today to fill in. Thanks, Devin. I know you've had a busy schedule and you've missed a couple of shows. What have you been up to in the last week, 2, 3? I don't even know what you do anymore. What do you do?
You've been busy too.
Oh, man.
I've been it's more of the same, but a lot of new projects are launching and things like that. And nothing exciting yet to report on. It's just a lot of meetings to go over things that may never become, and I find that soul draining. I'd rather be out shooting. But you've been busy too, man. There's been a few nights where I'm like, "Hey, you available?" And you're like, "Nope."
I've been working on I've been working on DVD production for Flatwater Terrors. That's going into print here in a week or two. So I was just finishing up the little ins and outs, the DVD menus and so on for another feature length release. Another horror movie. Great. Also, I've been buying stuff. I've been selling stuff off because we all get into this habit where we get new gear, we're really excited about it, we want to use it, and then that gear gets old after 3 or 4 years, and we decide maybe it's time to move on. So on the chopping block for me, this week actually, I sold off my Hero 3 Black Edition. Managed to squeeze $220 out of that. Go me. Got rid of the Zoom H4n and replaced it with this guy right here. The camera that does not work, obviously, is showing great pictures, so I guess
it's a loose cable. It's HDMI failing once again.
Yeah. Anyway, I replaced it with a Zoom H6, and also I've got this guy here in my kit that I've been dinking around with pre-shoot. I wanted to make sure I got it all set up. This is the Feel World G55 IPS display 1080p screen. That's HDMI SDI capable. Very nice screen. Currently dealing with some battery issues though. You'll notice that I have an NP style battery mount on the back of this. When I got it, it actually came with a battery for LPE6 plate adapter, but it was a single LPE6 and I was only able to get maybe 40 minutes maximum.
Which isn't really usable for a monitor, much less a camera.
So running it off of these larger NP batteries like this one right here, I'm able to get about 2.5 to 3 hours out of it. So I was thinking maybe I could build an adapter, and I stole this off of one of my small rig monitors of old, and this is a dual LPE6 adapter. I'm going to solder this up so that they're in parallel, and that would give you a doubling of maximum capacity for an LPE6 battery, which is about equivalent to 400 or 4,400 milliamp hours, which is roughly the size of a medium MP battery. Yeah. So I have a lot more of the LPE6. If that works, I'm going to end up going with this. So I'll probably post some pictures on that in the near term. Have you been purchasing anything, buying anything, getting a kit?
Not anything that I have on me right now. I bought an ICANN Spotlight. It's a little, geez, you got me over here in the moment. And ICANN, I like it because this ICANN Spot is USB powered, which is kind of weird, and uses mini connectors instead of micro, which is unusual these days. But let's see here. I pull this up, and then I go over here and I say share screen, and then I apologize to people who are listening because they can't see this. But this ICANN LED here, I'm not necessarily in love with the light coming out of it. I haven't really tested it yet, but it seems to come out very, very blue. But I plan on using this anyways in the background as kind of an accent light. So it's powerful enough that I can kind of put laser beams on the backdrops and things like that. And because it's a focused light, those two barn doors can actually be used as barn doors to cut the light. as well as a little bit of diffusion and whatever else is on there. But the pricing was okay for me, you know, $60 for that. And I'm like, I can use it as like a hair light or something like that. It's just a nice little package. Or if I'm running around with my shoulder rig, I can just USB power that guy and he'll run all day for me. So yeah, it's just something that was kind of cheap and light and fun to play around with. So I picked up one of those.
Was the I can use this a nice joke there? Because that's pretty funny, right?
No, it wasn't.
All right, that was the I can LED. Is that correct?
Yeah, MS, the micro spot, because they also have a small flood as well, which I bought. But once again, the lighting, I'm not a high CRI is what I'm trying to say here. Kind of rough on the CRI index. So
yeah, I've got a couple of the little baby icans that I'm using for the podcast right now, and they work pretty well. The battery life on them is about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Not horrible. One other thing I want to talk about, you'll notice now that I'm not peaking and my audio levels have gotten a little bit better. I'm going to change back over to the extra cam, and I apologize to those who are listening to the podcast as opposed to watching it, but we've kind of changed the studio setup a little bit. It's still a freaking mess, and if anybody comes up with a better way to route audio, please feel free to send information my way. Right now I'm using a Tascam DR70D as my main recorder, and that is mixing down the audio tracks from the return path, which is the Lexicon here that's bringing Devin's audio back into the recorder. And then I am recording my own, or I'm sending my own audio back to Google Hangouts via the Zoom H6. And that's a pretty messy configuration that makes a pile on my desk. So if you think of some better way to do this, basically I'm trying to separate Devin's channel out so it doesn't feed back to him via Hangouts. And I've done this, it works, but there's a lot of wires on my desk, and it's not nearly as convenient as I'd like it to be. Anything else you want to talk about before we move on to the news, Devin?
No, I think I'm good with that. Let's move on to the news.
All right, time for the news. Time for the news. First up, let's talk about a new standard. Bluetooth 5.0 is sort of on its way. We haven't got the official announcement yet, but there has been a letter written describing what we can expect to see in this latest revision of the standard. You can find that here on the Bluetooth news. Richard writes a nice letter explaining some of the stuff that we should expect to see. The takeaway from this is actually that we'll get more range at still a low power function, and we will also get quadruple the speed, so more data across Bluetooth. Also, some independent control even when the device is not connected via Bluetooth. Devin, what do you think this means for cell phone users and people with wireless headphones? Is this going to be a better deal? We're going to get better resolution audio?
I mean, for one thing, yeah, I think definitely they'll more bandwidth always means more that you can do with audio. Let's face it. You and me have been trying out Bluetooth long enough. We know what Bluetooth 2.0 headphones sound like, and it's a far cry from just a simple analog jack. But for me, I'm excited for reasons that don't exactly fall under this show. In cases where this means usually that also with doubling the range and features is that mesh networking and beacons are going to become more of a thing. In home automation, one of the big problems with having lights that automatically turn off and turn on is that it doesn't necessarily know if somebody's in the room or if they aren't, because it's either based off motion, so what happens when somebody doesn't move, or other annoying things like that. Everyone's like gone to work on the toilet and the light turns off on you because you stopped moving for 2 minutes. So there's this makes it interesting because I think this will really change the game from home automation. It's going to be interesting because it sounds like the 2.4 gigahertz is going to get a lot more noisy, as if it isn't already. But still, I'm excited to see what kind of people are going to take this technology and move it out. I think this is really going to start to push out Zigbee and Z-Wave as home automation standards, as Bluetooth is so ambiguous and it's built into every product that now just about anything with a cheap chip can become part of some kind of integrated home automation thing. More range, though, I think will definitely mean that we may see some wireless audio applications in terms of low-budget indie filmmaking. that instead of maybe using Wi-Fi standard, just use a standard Bluetooth standard. That may make things interesting. I mean, imagine if your boom op could wirelessly not just send its audio, in high quality to the recorder, but also listen with Bluetooth headphones, just off the shelf Bluetooth
yeah, but
headphones.
what about the latency, man? I mean, Bluetooth latency latency is pretty substantial.
Possibly. For me, it wouldn't bother because I'd have noise isolated headphones anyways, because that's how I shoot. I'm used to delayed audio, but I understand what you're saying. Live mixing is not probably going to be a possibility with Bluetooth stuff, but I'm always excited because out of most things, Bluetooth stuff always seems to be super cost effective, and it's just the performance hasn't been there. So this stating that it's going to increase performance, increase range, and things like that, I think may open up the door for more companies to start using it as part of their products. Especially too, I always hate using Wi-Fi to connect to cameras. It'd be really great if cameras could connect over Bluetooth, because usually when you connect over Wi-Fi, it shuts down your data and all this other stuff. And just the way internal data routing works inside of a phone, connecting something via Wi-Fi is always stupid to me.
The Bluetooth option is actually, that's a pretty interesting feature that I'm already seeing in cameras. The GoPro has a Bluetooth option. The camera that I'm using right now, the E1Z Cam, has Bluetooth functionality that allows to start-stop recording. I believe the Zoom H8 has a Bluetooth interface that allows you to basically control the recorder, start and stop channel recording, and see basic level information on the fly via Bluetooth. Those are all implementations of Bluetooth, and I've even seen, and maybe I can't remember for sure, so I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure I've seen Bluetooth functionality for start-stop recording in even high-end cameras. I might be wrong, but it seems like that JVC G300 had some sort of Bluetooth functionality as well as Wi-Fi functionality.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right, Devin. The Wi-Fi usage, like, there's nothing worse than you're like, oh, I need to look something up on my phone, but your phone is bonded to a Wi-Fi network that dead ends at your device, so you can't get any data or anything like that.
Yeah, and so that would be great. And then imagine too, because Bluetooth, this is starting to get into the bandwidth where, I mean, we're not talking uncompressed, 1080p here, but we are starting to talk about numbers where we could be seeing better live previews with less latency. Imagine if a camera could have built-in Bluetooth, and anyone with a Bluetooth device could watch a video stream off of it. Obviously there'd be a limit on the number of devices and things like that, but how cool would it be if you had like a new C300 or something like that, or a new Sony camera, and literally everyone around you with Android and iPhones could dial into the camera and have their own director's monitor that you don't have to wire up and worry about syncing and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I see this going. Of course, like you kind of mentioned, I think it's funny because JVC will probably be the first people to really jump on this new technology with Bluetooth, because they always seem to be at the forefront.
The FS5 and FS7 have some sort of Wi-Fi functionality, if I remember correctly.
They do. And
you can actually set up an IP address that everybody can log into that network via a repeater or what have you, and then see a stream, a dedicated H.264 stream that's going from the camera, down-resed or what have you. And they can watch it via a web browser or a plugin on their phone, computer, or smart device. And that's okay. Setting something like that up, especially if people are relying on it as their view for what's going on. I mean, there's delays. Sometimes with that many Wi-Fi connections going on in the same room, you can have issues with latency or plain refresh rates. Watching something at 15 frames per second can be extremely painful. Now, before we get off the Bluetooth topic, and Devin and I were both reminiscing about our favorite Bluetooth headphones, and I actually happen to have a pair right here. This is the Motorola S305, and these were top of the line in 2011. I use these as disposable Bluetooth headphones. They're about $15 a pop. They last about 4.5 to 5 hours. You can find them on eBay or on Amazon for really cheap. They're very comfortable, fairly loud, and they don't get in the way, and they're so affordable that if you break them, you just go get another pair. And in fact, when I'm traveling, I keep 2 to 3 pairs of these in my bag, and that way I never have to worry about battery life issues. This can last me 2 or 3 days easily with 3 of these in my bag without any issue at all. Continuous listening. Devin, you've had a couple of pairs of these. What do you think?
I've had a single pair of mine because I've not worn through mine as quickly as you wear through yours. Obviously, you are the expert on the reliability of those headphones, but I've always loved mine, and it still has been keeping up. Even though mine are from 2011, I easily get like 3.5, probably 4 hours out of it. They handle sweat and everything else that goes into it, and I've always been impressed with the sound quality. I know it's like, you know, kind of older Bluetooth, and they're kind of cheap, you know, $20 headphones at this point. But for me, unlike a lot of wireless earbuds I've tried out, it's like these stay on my ears. These are pretty comfortable. And the sound, like, it's not brilliant, but it's not too much in one direction. It's not too bassy. It's not too tinny. It doesn't sound super flat. It's actually a pretty pleasant sound for what is like wireless headphones. And I know right now the rage is like the wireless earbuds where there's not even a wire going in between.
Oh, those are the worst.
And there's so many problem with those and everything else. And I'm like, look, if you just want some wireless headphones that just work and they sound okay and they're for running or, you know, working outside or something like that, literally $20 and you can't go wrong. Is that for the price, they're the best thing you can buy.
Now, let's move on down the line in the show notes here and talk about batteries for your rig. We're all very familiar with gold mount and V mount batteries. We've talked about them a lot on the show. But what if you want to strap a big old freaking battery to your rig that doesn't require a snap-in plate or an NP battery type of setup where the battery isn't solid? Let's look at this thing. Devin, what is this grip? And apparently Zacuto has just moved into the market with this thing, but it's been sold under different brand names previously. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, I believed we hit this up probably months ago. I think I threw this back in the I threw this in the notes quite a long time ago because this company came out and it was kind of like, there isn't really too much of a use for it, and I didn't see a lot of people buying it or being interested in it. But I thought if you just needed to, you know, you aren't necessarily interested in swapping out batteries on the fly like a gold mount or a V mount, this was a way to power your EVF, power your Atomos Ninja, power your camera, power everything you want off of one battery. When this one battery lasts you 8 hours, most people don't need to worry about hot swapping batteries.
This is what, like 75 watts or so?
Yeah, I believe this one's about an 80, 75 or 80. And I do think they make ones that go up to 120 maybe or 130.
Okay.
But in any case, this snaps right onto your 15 millimeter rails. They're all about being easy. They've got a big D-tap/P-tap. And the reason why now Zacuto has jumped on it is because the new Zacuto Gratical, which is their new EVF, doesn't have any kind of battery options in terms of like sliding in an LP or anything like that. As opposed to, I think the previous Gratical actually had an LP mount so that you could put a Canon battery on there. And so now, realizing that they have a problem, Zacuto's like, oh, here's an accessory you can use to power your Gratical. So that's why Zacuto's jumping all over it. That's why it's back in the news. But I just think it's cool because if you want to go in the direction of having a few accessories with your DSLR camera and then not have everything have like a Sony MP on it or have like a couple Canon LPs on it, and you do want that one battery that just runs it all for 8 hours, this is definitely a very affordable way to go about that. And I love it because it's not bulky. As soon as you add that mounting plate and like you attach that to rails and stuff like that, it kind of starts to bulk out the rig. I think this is really the most minimal way to add 70, 80 watt hours to your rig without getting super crazy with clips and everything else and angles and stuff like that. So, and if you shoulder mount, it's a nice counterweight too. You know, you're not wasting that weight. So they come in a few different models, and when you compare them to how much a gold mount is, they're about the same price, maybe a little bit cheaper than what a gold mount would be, probably closer to what V mounts cost in this range. But once again, if you don't want to deal with the bulk, you can kind of just buy this one battery and it runs everything for you. And I think it includes a charger, which for that price, you wouldn't get a charger if you bought a V mount. So
what is the price, Devin? Because I'm looking around here trying to find actual prices on this, and I'm not seeing anything listed on their site.
Well, last time I looked at it, let me see here. Because I looked at Zacuto. Did you look at their official website? Because that's part of it too, is that in the press release a long time ago, they had a price.
Yeah, I went straight to the, Woodward, or no, Hawk Woods I went
Yeah.
straight to their site to check it out, and it looks like on the
No,
Zacuto
'cause
site, $260. Maybe they've bought the rights to sell this exclusively.
They might have bought the rights to sell it exclusively because I'll tell you I can't find it anywhere else. But yeah, the 75 watt hour is 260, and that supposedly includes the charger. And once again, it's like, yeah, you could maybe find some Chinese batteries that are a little bit cheaper than this, but you need the mounting plate and all of that kind of stuff to make it all work, and it bulks up your rig. And this is all about, hey, I'm only going to have one battery. And it's a nice way to enter into it. If I wasn't so power hungry, to put it one way, then I would go with a solution like this for powering my rig instead of going with the gold mounts that I have now.
Nice. Yeah, I don't really need giant battery solutions like this. In fact, I'm heading to Peru here in another week or so, and I was trying to figure out a way to charge every single device that I'm taking with me via USB. And I know that sounds
ridiculous.
When I say it out loud, I start to think, man, this is stupid. But hear me out. So using an actual converter to go from 60 hertz to 50 hertz and then the 220 versus 120, there's a lot of risks involved with hooking your equipment up, using proper adapters, making sure everything's rated. And I don't want to blow any camera kit up. And so for about $40, I can buy one of those 2 amp 10 port chargers, and those are capable of handling both 120 and 220 at 240 at 60 and 50 hertz. So you basically just buy a little plug-in adapter for it, plug it into the wall, and then I was looking on eBay and I was looking on Amazon, and I found a set of battery chargers, dual battery chargers that will charge both the Sony A7S batteries as well as my trusty LX100 batteries. I can charge up a big, heavy-duty battery that will provide 14.4 volts at the tap if I need it for running any kind of monitors or anything like that. I can charge up my phone. I can charge up a tablet. And I'm bringing a Windows Surface with me, which is also chargeable via USB. So all those items combined to make a very minimalist production setup that is 100% USB. And then, of course, I'm bringing some small lights that are chargeable via USB with a rechargeable battery built into them. So, bam, I think I've actually nailed it. It still seems like ridiculous to me, but I'm trying.
You've got to post some of those pictures on Twitter. I got to see this layout in action that you're speaking of.
Oh man, it's going to be a mess. But I have to fit everything into 2,500 square inches. So my travel space to Peru is very small. It's like a single backpack. So that includes my clothes, my camera gear, everything else. And of course there'll be kit for me when I get there, but I still I want to have some of my own stuff just in case things go sideways. And then I need to bring low enough value stuff that if I end up getting stopped by the police or picked up by bandits, that I'm not crying when I am robbed blind of all my equipment. This is a crazy dream of mine and the travel dream to charge everything via USB. I don't know if if I'll actually make it there. I may still have to carry some things with plugs, but we'll find out. All right, moving on down the line. This next one is yours as well, Devin. Headsets. Yeah. What is going on?
You don't care. You don't care about it. Okay, so anyone who's working with a team of cameramen, usually in a live broadcast situation, it's not necessarily useful for indie film guys, but if you are doing live broadcasts, this company is showing off at the Cine Expo these headsets, which run for 6 hours, will run 400 yards from the master headset, and you can have up to 4 without having some kind of hub or controller unit. And what's really crazy is the price. They're only $150 a headset, and I know you're thinking, Devin, I can get a GMRS radio for about $30 a piece. Why would I go for something like this? And really the reason why is because these have full duplex, and that's what you don't get on a radio. On a radio, when you talk, you can't hear anyone else. And when somebody else is talking, no one else can talk. And full duplex allows you to talk and listen simultaneously without clicking stuff on and off or anything like that. In most cases, a film set can get away with just normal two-way radios because they don't necessarily need to call camera cues and a bunch of crazy stuff. But here, this is the cheapest I've seen for a portable system. They have swappable batteries, so you don't need to like take off the headset to charge it. They only take 2 hours to charge a battery. They last for 6 hours. And so there's a few small productions I've been on that have in the past that at this point would have definitely had the budget for this instead of doing some kind of like, super expensive ClearCom system or anything like that. I don't think this will match kind of the quality you get with a ClearCom or another proper wireless communication system for broadcast. But if you're kind of like, shooting like high school sports or stuff like that, you want to communicate with your cameraman while you're switching graphics or something like that, you can buy a couple of these headsets. You don't need a base station. They require no setup. You just turn them on and go. And so that kind of simplicity and everything, I think, makes them really cool. So probably not very interesting for most of our viewers, but I think that there's maybe a few guys out there who have been looking for a really good communication system that is idiot-proof, maybe, and as well as affordable.
When I saw these, I was thinking, man, if I were still playing paintball, this would be the perfect like strategic coordination. Yeah, they're a little big and goofy. I would love to see something smaller than this. The interchangeable batteries is nice. Honestly, on a regular film set, I don't use walkie-talkies unless I'm trying to cue someone from a long ways away. And in years past, I mean, we have cell phones. It's not really that big a deal. What I do miss, though, and you may remember this from the early 2000s, push-to-talk.
Yeah.
You remember that feature? That used to be amazingly handy when I was trying to keep track of people who were going out picking up items for a shoot while also, having someone gather the generator and wrangle actors and actresses.
That was mostly through Sprint, right? And it was using cell phone to cell phone communication?
Yeah, the one I was using was via Verizon, if I remember correctly, or it may have been Altel is the provider. But I think Altel was the provider. But the nice thing is that your cell phone worked as a cell phone, but you could also use the cellular network like a walkie-talkie. And it was simplex, so you push the button, it hit whoever you're talking to or a bunch of people, and it would, you would say what you need to say and then wait for a response. And so if you had like 5 or 6 people on the push to talk, you just push it and you're like, hey, where's the water at? Where's the generator at? What's the ETA on our freaking actors getting here from, the hotel? And you would get somebody who was listening because everybody had it on, and they would be like, oh yeah, I'm like 15 minutes away. The water's out here. The generator just showed up and I'm loading it right now, or whatever. And like that was super handy.
And it's a shame that feature went away because it didn't cost you any minutes. People didn't have to carry around a second device in order to communicate. And for the most part, you didn't have to worry about like charging another device and making sure that it had juice in it. I do miss those days. I know what you're talking about because I know that it was used a lot too in like construction work and things like that. A lot of people really used it, and then I guess everything went digital or whatever, and it just disappeared.
Yeah, I know a couple people that try to use Facebook Messenger in that manner, and it's frustrating as hell because I'm one of those guys who doesn't have Facebook Messenger installed on my phone. I refuse to install Facebook on my phone, and then they're like, well, didn't you get my Facebook message? It went out to the group, so you should see it. It's like, so I have to use the web browser on my phone to log in and like check it. I try to avoid that as much as possible. It's a nightmare. Now, something I'm not avoiding is hopefully finding out more about the GH5. Panasonic has the GH4 right now. It's getting a little bit long in the tooth, and Devin and I were discussing before the show that the price has actually dropped down to $899 on eBay on the gray market. So if you're looking for a GH4, they are extremely well priced. This latest rumor on the GH5, though, is claiming that we may still see a repeat of the previous generation of sensor, the 16-megapixel sensor used in the original GH5 and now used in the GX80. And the reason they may go with this is the possibility that the higher capabilities of the CPU in the GH5 will allow the camera to extract more color information from the sensor itself. Devin, you've seen the features and the reviews of the GX80 or 85 or what's the other one? Was the GX7 Mark II? I think
Mark
is what it's called in
something
Japan.
Crazy like that. I've seen it. To me, it's looking impressive. The stabilization is looking impressive. It's still low bit rate, but for the most part, it looks like what I would kind of expect out of a GH5. The bigger question is now kind of getting an idea of what sensors in it. Do you still believe the GH5 is going to be a 5K camera?
I don't know. I want to maintain that expectation going forward. And I, I'm the one who a couple episodes ago, or 5 or 6 episodes ago, predicted what I thought I'd see in the GH5. I hope that it's going to be 5K. Actually, I don't know. I don't even know if I hope. It's not really that big a deal to me if it doesn't exceed 4K in this next iteration. In fact, if the camera comes out as a 4K camera, but they add image stabilization, a little bit better low light performance, I would love to see the camera be able to perform at up to 3200 ISO instead of 1600 ISO and not have it start to break down. You give me a little bit higher bit rate in the 4K image capabilities, and also maybe tweak it so that I have some sort of built-in flat picture style, even though I'm not a big fan of that, but make it available for me without an extra pricey upgrade of $100. And the GH5 would still be in a really sweet spot. I still have all of my Micro Four Thirds lenses. I bought the entire collection when I switched over to the GH4, and I still shoot on the GH4 on a regular basis. It's the yin to my yang with my Sony A7S. I mean, that almost works out because I use the A7S for low light, and I use the GH4 for pretty much everything else. The GH4 is a joy to shoot on. The lenses and the selection that I have of them are great. They weigh a lot less. Oh man, it is so light. And in fact, I saw one review complaining about the GX85. You know what the complaint was?
It was heavy.
It was heavy, yeah. And the funny thing is people were complaining before when the GX7 came out, which is a bigger camera. They're like, this feels cheap. It's too light. So then what does Panasonic do? They add a little bit of dummy weight to the GX85.
I believe it's called ballast.
Ballast, yes. And now people are like, well, this is too heavy for travel. I don't like this. It's like, well, how are they going to win here?
They'll never be happy. The feature I would like to see most, and you can tell me if this is just not physically possible with today's technology, but if that image stabilizing sensor could work with any lens, including lenses that don't natively communicate with the camera. Because I imagine at that point to stabilize, it would have to actually analyze the image to see objects and stabilize.
Oh, no, so that's completely possible. The Olympus OMD Mark 5
Mark II
5.
Yep.
Okay, whatever. That one is capable of doing that. Your image stabilization on sensor is based specifically on the camera's position and orientation. So it's using rotation, roll, your X, Y, and so on to determine where the camera is, how it's moving, and then adjust the sensor's position in space.
But I thought if you had a really long focal length, that then if you're trying to adjust based off the accelerometers, you could end up overcorrecting. It's
less about that. It's more about it not being able to keep up with that dramatic of shake in a really long reach lens. So you're still going to want IS if you're using something. I don't have it on my desk, but because I was shooting with it earlier. But the 40 to 150 millimeter f2.8 Olympus lens. Right. That one does not have image stabilization built into the lens body itself. So you put that onto the OMD5 Mark II, and it's going to still give you a noticeable handshake at 150, which is the 300 millimeters equivalent. If you put a 40 millimeter lens on there, or a 45 millimeter lens on there, it's going to give you about 90 millimeters equivalent, and the shake goes away dramatically. If you use the 35 to 100 millimeter f2.8 that has built-in IS on a in-camera image stabilized body, the IS in the lens will give you that extra bit of stabilization on top of that provides you with a nice stable image. So you can get a lot out of the in-body image stabilization, especially at wider focal lengths, but you start going into the 100 millimeter on a crop sensor camera, a Micro Four Thirds camera, and that's just enough reach that it's starting to...
it's not effective.
The amount of movement that you get, this far out is so much that the compensation in the sensor movement isn't enough to completely eradicate motion. I mean, it'll still smooth it a bit, but it's not nearly as dramatic as putting like a 15 millimeter f1.7 on your body and moving it around. And we saw that actually at NAB when we were messing around with the GX85. They put a medium range like 50 equivalent lens on there, and it looked good. It was really stabilized and nice and solid. But if you go to the store and you grab an OMD Mark 5 Mark II and you put a long-reaching lens on there, the image stabilization in body doesn't do as good a job as having IS in the lens body itself. So,
right.
You could use any off-the-shelf manual focus lens. Just be aware that the further you have, the higher millimeter rating of the lens, the longer the reach, the less it's going to do.
Absolutely. All right,
because that's a long-winded rant.
No, but I think that was very educational because yeah, it's part of that is adding a little bit of stabilization to maybe some of those like cheap cinema glasses we see, like a Rokinon and stuff like that.
Well, and it's the same thing on my Sony A7S Mark II, which is set up right now. I can put a Canon 50 millimeter f1.2 FD lens on here and get image stabilization out of the body, and it does just fine. I would argue it looks as well stabilized as any of the other lenses that are available. But you start getting really long reach lenses, like, well, I guess I have IS in my 200, so that doesn't count. But, if I turn that off,
eventually,
it'll shake.
Yeah, eventually, no matter how much, there's no way the sensor could jump and move into the position it needs to get to in order to capture the same light. So, yeah, as things stretch out, as in-camera stabilization can only go so far compared to optic stabilization.
All right, so let's get back to the GH5. What we want out of this, if I'm getting this correctly from you, is we want good 5-axis image stabilization. We want some improved color space and codecs for 4K at the very minimum. Maybe some usability features like a better menu system. I mean, it's already pretty easy to use the GH4, but there's a few things that I would love to see tweaked, like the timeout on the screen, maybe a higher resolution flip-out screen. And what about media? Do we want to see the new QX?
I don't think they would do this, but I could see them going to a new storage format requiring higher speed if they were doing 10-bit video in camera, which I don't think is something they're interested in doing. I don't think that's in their market share. And as like with the GH4, they're just going to advertise, hey, we can do 10-bit out of the HDMI. So if you really need it, just go record it externally. So, but that would be the only reason I would see the need to really jump up, because at the end of the day, it's still a hybrid camera. It's still a photography camera. And so they're going to base all their specs, FPS, and everything else based off of higher end memory cards. But it's not going to be like a Blackmagic where the highest quality setting only works with a SanDisk 95 megabit read and write card. And I think, too, that they wouldn't want to push it in that territory. So I'm not sure we're going to see bit rates over 200 megabit in this camera just because they don't want to limit the kind of cards you can use and have people start being like, this card didn't work with my camera.
That's what I was trying to remember, because the labels and standards for memory cards have jumped past the cameras that I own, and I don't own anything with the new stuff yet. But CFast and XQD are the two competing standards now. But XQD is closer to the format of a SD XC card, so similar size. And then the CFast is it's very fast, compact flash, basically implementing SATA in the card. The XQD, I could see Panasonic moving to that if they're trying to get to a higher bit rate. That's going to be pretty much a standard in cameras moving forward. And imagine for a second, if you will, that we get what's a burst rate in the GH4, like 11 frames per second?
I believe it was about frames? 11. Yeah.
Something like that. So it's a very high number. But imagine if you had a card that would never write slow enough that you would ever have to worry about filling up the buffer. Now you could go from 11 frames per second to, I don't know, like 18 or 20 frames, maybe 24 frames per second. And if we can send 24 frames per second still images maybe RAW. Who knows what that could mean for the GH5?
Oh,
Obviously, I'm just spitballing here,
you're just
but
shooting for the stars.
I
Oh
mean,
goodness.
imagine if that was possible.
Yeah.
And the data rate could coincide with that, or at least JPEG images, or maybe if you could do like a 3-to-1 or a 4-to-1 compression on your RAW files being sent to the card. You might be able to keep up with that. I mean, what's the bandwidth on an XQD? I think it's like 300 megs on the top end.
Yeah, it depends on what format you go with, but generally speaking, most of them coming out of Sony, which is the better medium of choice at this time, probably, their write speed is like 350.
Okay.
But what's nice though is that they're still reasonably priced. And while everyone always like flips out when a new card comes out and it costs a crap ton of money, in this case, 350 megabytes per second, and that is bytes, not bit, is 3 times faster than those SanDisk cards, and you can get a 128 gigabyte for 170 off of B&H. That's pretty cheap. I mean, it's a little bit over $1 per gig, but that's pretty cheap compared to a slow CFast cards, because you can't get CFast cards that are well above 500 megabytes write speed. But you can get a 300 megabit write speed CFast 2.0, and it's double the price for a 128 gigabyte. You're spending over $2 per gigabyte. So XQD is the smaller form factor. It may not have the potential to reach those incredible speeds that CFast does, because it's basically just shoving a tiny SSD in your camera. But I think it's pretty affordable by today's standards. Because I know a lot of people, when the FS7 first came out, they're talking about how expensive it was.
You're absolutely right, man. I didn't even think of that. The prices here, these prices are similar to what we were spending on 95 megasecond cards not more than like 8 months ago.
Yeah.
And the prices will continue to drop as the media becomes more and more popular with more and more cameras. I think you might be onto something here, Devin.
So because obviously this CFast is still bigger, so it would be used 2.0. CFast 2.0 is still bigger. I'd still see it being used in your 7Ds and your 5Ds and whatnot. But you're right, from the mirrorless market, none of them have taken a stand yet, but I could see them being like, hey, we want to do 5K video. Well, we better get some faster memory cards, and they go with the Sony standard for that. So...
All right, moving on down the line, we've beat the standards of the GH5 to death. Let's talk about exploding Steadicam rigs. This was an interesting article from, it looks like this is the YouTube link, but I also picked it up on planet5d.com. Free advertising
as
for Mitch
well
there,
as...
even though he's not on the show.
Even though he's not here. Well, some of the comments that we have in our notes is from Petapixel. I don't know if they are the original people who added these notes to it. But they had comments on the failure. Now, what the video, if you haven't seen it already, you can go watch it. A Steadicam op is testing out, actually, a Steadicam arm we saw at NAB. This is at the Cine Expo.
That's an Airy, isn't it? That's flying off of there. That's like a, holy crap. That's probably like a $50,000 camera going.
I believe it was quoted at 60,000, but yeah, that's an Airy Alexa.
Dang.
And fully kitted out to show the maximum weight potential of the arm, because that's what they're showing off here was the arm, which was made out of rubber bands. Kind of a unique way of doing a steady arm, and I'm not enough of a Steadicam operator to comment whether that is genius or that's just something to do on a whim. But he was testing out the rubber bands. It did a full extension, and then part of the bracket that holds the arm, the part that actually the company making the arm isn't responsible for, that actually snapped. The Steadicam operator in the video came anonymously on the news site and said that, he's had these problems with these arms before. This is the third one he's seen break in his career. He's got 2 of them broken at home, and said that it had something to do with the Pro Arm, the company that makes this bracket. And then the owner of the company, or one of the heads of the company, came back and said, you're using it wrong. That's supposed to be a back-mounted arm, not a front-mounted arm. Either way, politics and gossip and everything else that goes with it. But either way, it's one of those that is unfortunate to see, because it looked like he was having fun and definitely impressed with the lightness of the camera arm, and then to have it snap and a $60,000 Arri Alexa come crashing to the ground is always a tragic day.
Yeah, one of the things, and Devin and I got to play around with the rubber band steady arms at NAB. I've only ever taken the 1 week steady arm class, so I'm not a pro by any means, and I've never had to do it long term. But I will tell you that adjusting the springs and tweaking all of that business, going through the class, and then trying to eliminate the creaking sound of the springs, all those things can be somewhat daunting. With the rubber band system, well, I don't know if rubber bands are the solution for everything. It's really cool that you can just slip another rubber band on each side in order to increase the capacity of the units themselves. And you played with the same one that I played with. It was quiet. You didn't hear the rubber band stretching out. Very smooth motion, a little more even motion than you get out of the springs, at least on the only one I've ever flown spring related was the V16, and I think that's not a pro arm. That's a video something. I don't know. The V16. Go look it up. You can find it. And so the design is nice, and I wonder if this was a case. Did he bring his own vest to the table, and like they just handed him the arm to plug in?
He might have. I don't have the details on that, on who owned what. Because it's very likely that he was just
well, because if you look right here at this particular image, that's the shaft from the arm itself, and then this is where it couples to the vest, and you can see right here in the image it came loose from the vest, but the arm was still secured in its post hole. So I don't know. I mean, yes, maybe it is misuse on the operator's part, but man, what an embarrassing moment. And hopefully somebody had insurance on this crap.
Well, if anything, as long as the failure isn't tied with the company that makes the arm, it's nothing but free publicity for them. I thought the arm too, the concept of it was interesting. I think one of their major selling points too was the fact that they mentioned somehow that these rubber bands were easy to acquire. Like
they're off-the-shelf industrial rubber bands. So you can order them. Yeah, pretty much anywhere.
They're super light. So I think it really pockets itself for the people who travel a lot and do air travel and things like that, where that kind of weight really matters in what you carry around. Because it was the lightest thing I've ever felt, and its capacity to carry is extremely high too. So. Though I would be concerned with hanging out with rubber bands in the sun all day with a lot of UV light, but still fascinating stuff.
Yeah, they did mention when we talked to them at their booth that they do have a shelf life on the rubber bands, so they do recommend keeping extra ones in boxes or whatever for future use. Moving on to the last thing on the show notes here before Devin and I wrap it up tonight, let's talk about the really fun Instagram leak. This guy here was shooting some surfing videos, and he mentioned that he was shooting some promo videos for Canon. He also mentioned that Canon may have very well let him borrow the latest and greatest 5D Mark IV, as well as some lens replacements, the 24-105 Mark II. He posted this image to Instagram, and when a commenter asked about the camera being used, he basically admitted that he was shooting on the 5D Mark IV. Subsequently, the account, the image was pulled, and all the comments were deleted. So I don't know what this says about Canon's secret publicity market, but we do know it's coming, and now we've seen images of it. Devin, you've seen this too. I don't see anything that proves or tells me anything more about the camera itself, other than it's out in the wild. You have anything else to add to that before we move on?
Well, it always interests me. Like, is this a situation where somebody doesn't know how to read their NDA, or is this marketing by Canon?
You think this is like a leak on purpose?
Potentially, but I feel like if Canon came and said something, then I feel like it would be, because that allows them to put this on a national stage by making a press release about how this isn't something or is something or whatever. But in any case, I could also see it too, where Canon is like very involved with a lot of creative guys, and some of those creative guys just get really excited about the gear they're shooting with, and they can't wait to tell people about it. But in any case, yeah, this doesn't tell us much about the camera, or even really a good shot of what it looks like, though. I mean, we know what 5Ds look like. I don't imagine it's going to be much different this time around. But we all know it's coming. And there's definitely lots of people who are excited for it, and I can't wait to see some of the footage that comes out of it.
Yeah, the 5D Mark 4 will probably, I mean, I've sold off my 5D Mark III, but I haven't gotten rid of my Canon glass. Pending the price and the value offered by the 5D Mark IV, that will determine whether I continue down the Canon path. I am excited for the camera. Hopefully we'll see an announcement on that at Photokina coming up, I think, in October. Now, one last thing before we get out of here, and Devin and I kind of halfway talked about this. I mentioned I sold off my GoPro Hero 3 Black Edition for $220. And now, guess what I did with that $220, Devin?
You bought another Z-Cam.
No, I'm not going to buy another Z-Cam. They still haven't fixed the firmware on that. Those guys pulled my strings at NEB and made me feel like they were going to do something good, but they still haven't done it yet. I actually threw down on a pre-order of the YI 4K camera. You remember that weird one that we talked about?
The one I brought up. I put that in the show notes because you're like, oh, another action camera. What's the point of this?
Well, I was looking at it and I'm like, I have $220. This is the retail price of that is $249 pre-order. It has a screen on the back, has better battery life. I do use my GoPro still, but I mostly use my Hero 4 Black Edition. And I was thinking, man, wouldn't it be nice for $220 to have another one of these? And part of me was like, you're wasting your money, DJ. Don't do it. But I ended up pulling the trigger. I've got one on pre-order, so I'll have some posts on that when I get it in my hands. But looking at all the specs and everything available for that right now, I checked out the YI software. It's as good or better than GoPro software. I did notice, though, and I don't know if you've used GoPro in a while, but they've added, finally, editing features to the phone app for the Hero 4 Black Edition. You can actually do video editing on your phone from your Hero 4. So
that sounds painful to me.
Actually, it is not as painful as you think it should be.
Yeah?
The clip-in cuts, it's basically for trimming files and possibly combining files together, but it's a matter of thumb scrolling through the timeline, clicking on something, hitting the cut button, and it'll chop out whatever you want to delete. And really, with an action cam, what do you want? You want the part that you did the action for. And what do you end up filming? Well, a lot of people hit record, and then they meander about, get on their surfboard, swim out to wherever, and then they get to the one point. Well, now you can scroll through and cut the timeline to the one point where it's awesome. You can cut again, and I didn't explore all the features, but I think there's an auto feature too that will cut and allow you to clip multiple things together and then add music to it, similar to some of the things that we've seen from these startup companies that are providing automatic editing for your footage. I don't know how GoPro has gotten through all of this, but I do know that they acquired several phone video editing companies and have built up a software team of like 100 or 150 people because right now the market is in a bad way for GoPro cameras. But if they can build up a good software solution for video editing on your phone before anybody else, then they might still have a future moving forward in the software department. I mean, what do you think about that, Devin? Am I crazy?
No, I mean, I think that's kind of been their plan for a long time. The fact that they acquired Cineform and then turned that out and released that for free and then worked with Adobe to kind of really get that integrated. I think it shows that they've got bigger plans than just necessarily cameras. And you're right. We have an emerging market where people are capturing video, but they don't know how to put it together. And so we have kind of these boutiques that are popping up that are doing little edits for families and things like that, which isn't a terribly bad business. But we're also seeing a merging of people creating software that auto edits based off of a lot of metrics, depending on how much telemetry you can get it. I mean, we've seen things on Kickstarter and Indiegogo that haven't delivered yet that claim based on your heart rate and other things, it'll auto edit your footage for you off of their action camera. And so we could see something like that coming from GoPro, where GoPro is trying to put together a camera package that tries to react to accelerometer data and things like that to automatically edit together some footage to get more people interested in buying their product, knowing how easy it is to produce really cool looking videos. So, but back to the camera that you brought up that you're talking about pre-ordering, which I find fascinating because you said, what's the point? what I will say over the GoPro and why this is probably a better decision is, for one thing, I think the company's learned a lot. A buddy of mine had the original that did HD. It didn't do 4K at 30 frames, and he wasn't exactly thrilled with it. The quality was good, and the fact that it de-warped the lens and it had stabilization and it had a low light mode that had very little noise, he was all about that. But the app was mostly still in Chinese at the time, and the camera, it was impossible to change any kind of modes. When you turned it on, you had photo, you had video, and that was it. If you wanted time lapse or any of that kind of stuff, you needed to bring the phone out and use their software, which was a bit of a headache because there was so little English in it. It seems like they've learned all those lessons and all those complaints in this camera, because now with the touchscreen, it means you won't need your phone necessarily to set up this camera. As well as, too, I think they've made some improvements on the app for English-speaking owners of the camera and things like that. And then on top of it, I'm thrilled with the fact that not only do they give you 2 hours of 4K, which may not be as high bit rate or something like that as the GoPro, but I think 2 hours in this tiny package is more
It's actually at 60 megs codec, so 60 meg codec, so it's as good or better than
So it's
GoPro.
about on par with the GoPro.
Yeah.
One thing that I find crazy is the fact that it has 8 hours of standby time. And I know that shouldn't sound impressive because, you know, cell phones have been doing that for years. But for some reason, GoPro refuses to like have decent standby time. And I find that my GoPro runs out of battery very quickly, even if I'm not shooting anything with it. Or if I'm taking a time lapse and I say take a photo every minute, it still only lasts an hour and a half. So
well, what sold me is actually, look at these. There's several sexy features. One, the back screen here is actually a usable resolution that looks nice. That screen looks really nice. And I think the DPI works out to be like 250 or 300.
330.
Yeah, so very, very nice there. It's got what is this? A built-in quarter 20 mount?
Yep.
Oh, I mean,
How long have people been asking that from GoPro?
Exactly. The screen looks good. The image quality is, I mean, it looks to be as good as a regular GoPro. It's using pretty much the same innards as the GoPro. It has a 5 gigahertz as well as 2.4 gigahertz wireless transmitting capabilities. So streaming your video is going to be a lot easier. They've open sourced the app for the device, so a lot of people are programming for it that would otherwise not been available. And the price is darn cheap at $249. When I sold my Hero 3 Black Edition, I was looking around trying to decide if I was going to use the money for fun. I was going to buy some wacky thing that I didn't really need. And I kind of decided on the wacky thing. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. You know, I still wouldn't mind having a couple of GoPros to throw in my backpack now and again. And having a GoPro-like device that is half the price, quarter of the price of the 4 Black Edition, and provides me with features that I wish the Hero 4 Black Edition had, that's enough for me. If this doesn't come to me anytime in the near term, I'm not really worried about it, but I did throw my own money where my mouth is looking at this thing. Devin, are you going to get one now?
Gosh, yeah, now I have to. Now that you don't think it's, you know, now that you think it's kind of worth the price, gosh, I've been holding off on it because I'm like, I've got a GoPro, and now you're right. I should just sell my GoPro and get one of these.
Well, and I wasn't expecting to get what I was asking out of my GoPro Hero 3. I was expecting to get maybe 150 or 160 out of it, especially looking at the eBay sales of that particular item. But I put it up on Craigslist. Someone contacted me the same day, and 220 is, I think that's the going used rate on Amazon for it, and no fees or anything. So bam, done.
That's not
rolled
bad.
my money into something else. No problem. Same with the Hero 4. I mean not the Hero 4, the Zoom H4n. Like, I had no plans of selling that, but I was like, oh, wait a minute, you know, H6, I found one for really cheap, so I put my H4n up on Craigslist, and lo and behold, it sold for more than I was expecting, and completely paid for a Zoom H6. So now I am rocking the H6, which is bulkier, and it does work. It's nicer. It's way nicer.
And do the preamps sound better?
Yes. You are listening to them right now. The controls on this are much more usable. I don't know how excited I am about the whole color front-facing interface. It's okay. The menu system's a little clunkier than the Zoom H4n, which was sort of set up as an easy access get around in menu. This one, when you hit the menu button, you have to use the little scroll wheel, jog wheel, and sometimes it's the menu button that does something, and sometimes it is the little moving shaft that does stuff. And I don't think it's as well thought out as it could have been. The other thing that's missing, and if this camera doesn't go sideways on me again, I can show it. If you look at the H5 versus the H6, the H5 has a bar all the way across this. And the bar isn't an absolute necessity, but it keeps it from accidentally bumping this dial right here. The dial can be an issue where it's at, and I wish they had incorporated that in both of them, but then it would have made it more bulky. So maybe that's not the solution. I don't know. Anyway, bought this, got the new fake GoPro coming. I'm excited. I'm leaving the country in another week, and then we'll be back to regular schedule after that. Devin, I know the last thing before we go, 4th of July is coming up. Do you have any crazy plans for 4th of July?
Yes. I am.
Where can people find you on the 4th of July, Devin?
I'm trying to set up a time lapse of fireworks with motion control stuff. Because I've been looking for more excuses to bring out my motion control and go through the hassle of setting it up. So a night on the hill with some fireworks seems like a good excuse for that.
Beautiful. On my end, I think I'll be in Seattle for 4th of July. So thanks for that. Devin, before we get out of here, where can people find you?
You can just find me on Twitter at DevoCut. I love taking questions, so feel free to ask me anything.
And of course, guys, you can find me at DSLRFilmNoob.com. You can find me on Twitter at DSLRFilmNoob. You can find this podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, or anywhere podcasts are distributed. Thanks for watching, listening, or however you ingest this. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe. And of course, leave your comments in the YouTube section or at us on Twitter. I don't think it's at us. I'm old. I'm an old person. Follow us.
Mr. Yes. Old person. Follow us on Twitter.
I mean, I was just informed the other day by my nephew that Twitter is for old people. So obviously, I am dating myself in this neck of the woods. I will see you guys next time. Devin will see you next time on another exciting episode of DSLR Film Noob Podcast. I know I kind of poo-pooed action cameras, but man, this thing is pretty sexy.
Well, you know what's kind of cool is that their GoPro with its like what do you call it? Flattish profile, pro mode, pro tune.
Yeah.
GoPro with its pro tune is definitely trying to attract the professional market as using it as a crash cam and other things like that. Where this company is more targeted towards the fact that what you get out of the camera is already ready to go by like defishing the video and stabilizing it and denoising it, because those are all features that wouldn't come on GoPro, because GoPro would be like, well, that'll look better if you do it in software rather than in camera.
Well, and it also has the in-camera 3-axis image stabilization, so that's something we've been. It
claims 6. I don't know where it gets that sorcery from.
Maybe the 6. Where's the 6th axis? Is that like?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I think they make it up.
I mean, I live in a world of axes, and I don't know where that secret axis is coming from. Regardless, this thing is still pretty sexy. The image stabilization is nice. The sensor itself is exactly the same as the GoPro, and it's using the new Umbrella processor system on a chip setup. So basically, it's what you're going to see in the next GoPro Hero 5. I mean, honestly, maybe they'll do something with the lens or something like that to make it a little bit nicer. But at the price, I mean, I wasn't complaining about the image quality of the Hero 3 and the Hero 4. I use it all the time. I mean, obviously, it's a very specific type of look, but it runs on batteries and it's this small. So even if I'm not shooting on it, there's always a Hero 4 in my kit for whatever reason I can think of. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, but then too, and that Hero 4 would only last you like a little over an hour.
Are you kidding me? Okay, right here. Look at this mess. This is how many batteries I carry in my kit for the Hero 4 Black Edition. That is 7 freaking batteries, 7 batteries, and I have to use. I've got one back here. Look at this. This is the charger to keep up with the battery usage because it uses so many batteries. I've got 2 of these that are continuously charging Hero 4 Black Edition batteries to keep up with the usage because it just burns through batteries like nobody's business. So it's fine. I mean, these batteries are very tiny and the unit's very tiny. So it doesn't take up much space to throw it. I throw it in a microphone bag and stick it in my kit. But if you told me I could carry half that many batteries and get the same amount of time out of it, thank you. Yes, please. Sign me up. You know? And the new processor is supposed to be power efficient by like 30% or 40% better than the one that's currently used in the Hero 4 Black Edition. So if that's the case, I mean, bam, right there is part of your savings.
Well, and when you check a lot of side-by-side comparisons, like I saw one that was just about battery life. And I think like both of them set up to record 4K, and you see, I think the GoPro died out at like 50 minutes. And their camera actually, I mean, obviously they charged it all the way up and then turned it on right away and started the timer. But I think it went all the way to 1 hour and 10 minutes or 12 minutes. So, or I mean, 2 hours and 12 minutes. So it's they're delivering on that promise for sure. It's not just a gimmick.
Well, and the other thing too is the backpack. I mean, you've used a GoPro backpack, and I've got one laying around here somewhere on the table.
I've got tons of them.
And the backpack screen is god awful.
Yeah.
The capacitance on it is resistive, or the touchscreen is resistive, so it doesn't work very well. Like you really have to push at it. Getting through the menus on that is a pain in the butt. You almost have to use the phone app, and I can't imagine anybody can make a worse phone app than GoPro. I mean, using the app once you get it set up and synced is fine, but getting it set up, going through the process, actually having to pull the battery out of the battery compartment, type in serial number information, and download firmware updates. I mean, who does that? What the hell? Come on. And then on top of that, you are also trying to log into the Wi-Fi network. It resets the camera, like 3 times to get Wi-Fi set up on your phone? That's ridiculous. Yeah. And I understand why they require a serial number. Obviously, since they're using a non-proprietary board to run the Hero 4 Black Edition, anybody and their brother could go download it if it wasn't locked down and install the firmware on any other umbrella SoC and basically have an exact clone of a GoPro. But I don't know. I think other companies can basically accomplish the same software feats that GoPro has accomplished over the past number of years.
Like you mentioned with their editing, that's what they're claiming with this new 4K camera. I mean, in their description, they say it's limited to 6 seconds to 30 seconds. So I don't know if that means like out of such a long clip, you can pull out a 30-second clip or something like that out of it. But like they're even building photo and video editing into their application as well, because it's reaching the point where most software developments can do this.
Well, and I wonder, too, when GoPro will start charging for the application or the editing features, because I could imagine a world where you pay $10 or $5 or maybe even a subscription fee of $2 a year or something like that to use GoPro's full-fledged editing suite on your phone with any device that you can gather video from, like your phone itself.
Sure, yeah.
So then now you are capable of combining action footage from your GoPro with, say, 4K footage from your Galaxy S7, from your YI camera, from your Canon camera that you've ingested via like a dongle of some kind. I think that's the future, and phones just keep getting more powerful. I would love a day where I didn't have to use a Windows PC in order to accomplish very basic editing. If I'm just trying to crank out something rough or something fun or something for my family, that it doesn't have any final destination of, making money or selling to a client or something like that.
And I think too that like, that kind of software that can kind of start doing the editing on its own, as crazy as that sounds, I think that'll be a defining factor if GoPro continues on, because with them continuing to buy someone else's chips and just writing their own firmware, they're going to start losing at that game pretty soon, because software developers are a dime a dozen these days.
Well, one other thing to mention before we get out of here is that there's a really good interview on The Verge of the CEO of GoPro. And
Yeah.
he mentions that one of the problems that they see with the market is A, saturation. Everybody and their brother has an action camera these days. And B, the fact that 75 to 80% of the footage that's shot on a GoPro is never seen. People never
Right,
do
yeah.
anything with it. They just they film it for whatever reason. It stays on the memory card, and then at some point they erase it and film something else. And 75 to 80%. I mean, imagine how much stuff is getting recorded that basically is either junk or people don't care about enough, or that they don't know what to do with it as far as editing goes. So they play it back for a few of their friends on their phone, and then after that they delete it so they have space to record something else.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy.
No, and trying to transition from the raw footage you record to, let's face it, where people believe it belongs on Facebook and things like that. That's the last mile, and that's probably the one thing GoPro needs to conquer if they want to corner the market.
All right. On that note, guys, that was I kind of still wanted to have this discussion with Devin, so that was for me. If you guys got tired of the discussion on GoPro as well, sorry about that. For those of you still watching, thanks again for watching. Devin, say goodbye.
Goodbye, Devin.
Goodbye, Devin. We'll see you guys next time on another show. And I should end every show with just putting
A lens
the
cap
cap on
I like it.
and going dark.